I was always an active child and teenager. I was in gymnastics and a cheerleader. I never walked. I always was doing some sort of somersault or tumbling move as a child. I did leave movement for a while. I wasn't very active in college other than dancing, and that was in clubs and partying and being crazy. And I got tired of that in my mid-20s, and I wanted to clean up my lifestyle. And I started reading a book that my sister was reading by Dr. Andrew Weil. I think it was called Spontaneous Healing. And I started to really focus on food and nutrition. And also I started to work out, and I picked Taibo, which was the hot thing back in those days. And I did it every day. And then I started to go to gyms, and I just started to fall in love with movement and the way it made me feel. And it was really a healthy pastime. I was majoring in art, and I found myself going to the bookstores and reading more about, or picking magazines that were fitness related over the design magazines. And so I started to question myself on really what my career should be. Should it be interior design, which I still to this day love, or should it be fitness, when obviously my passion was movement? And I also thought, well, this is a great career path because I get to stay fit and get paid to do that. So I was trying to find something to do where I could use fitness in my career. Back then, I guess I just, like any new person, to exercise, even though I had been fit, extremely fit as a child, extremely fit as a teenager, I loved the way it made me feel, and I would feel better after it. I got addicted to exercise, and it almost became imbalanced because I would never take breaks. I would never rest. I was always doing it. I felt like if I took a day off, I was going to lose my health, my fitness. So it became a bit of an obsession, but that's kind of a pattern in my life. I get obsessed about things. So I really had to find some balance and really educate myself in fitness. But it was just an amazing pastime, and I couldn't get enough of it. I was always quizzing trainers, always finding people to watch and study. And I just knew that was what I needed to do in some shape, form, or fashion. Well, after finding that exercise made me feel a lot better, it made me have more energy, it made me excited to do something. I also loved the fact that I could stay lean and was defining my muscles. But I, from a very young child, always had this huge fear of gaining weight. And in fact, I never wanted to have children just because I didn't want to gain weight in pregnancy. And always swore I'd never have children just for that very reason, which is really crazy to think about now. But I loved fitness because I was good at movement. I had all that development as a child in good form and gymnastics. So I really loved to move and was good at it, but I also loved to use it almost obsessively as a way to control my weight. And it got out of balance because I didn't know when to take breaks. I didn't know that I could actually work out fewer days a week or less in less time. Sometimes I would work out 2 hours a day, and I would never skip a workout. And so we're talking 7 days a week, and I never stretched. So it was like I was learning about fitness. I was obsessed with it. I loved it, but I was also creating some fear with it, which was I can't take breaks. I can't relax at all. I was hired as a flight attendant for United Airlines, and when I got based JFK, which is New York City, in my interview with one of the people at United, she asked me what I wanted to do, and at the time I was really heavily into interior design, but that passion for fitness was coming up, and I was like, I really want to be a fitness trainer. And she said, oh, this will be a great career for you because you'll have days off and you can really, do other things. You can, be a trainer, you could study, whatever. And so I worked a year as a flight attendant. I traveled all over, and that was when I got my membership at Crunch in New York City. It was $79 a month. And I made so little money, and I remember my dad saying, you like need to cut this membership out. Looking at your finances, like your rent $600, you can barely buy food, and you have this $80 a month Crunch membership. And I was like, I cannot cut that out. That is what gets me through every day and every week and every trip. And they had locations in LA and San Francisco, and that's kind of where I flew mostly. And I would not, like I said, I would not miss a workout. So the Crunch membership was it for me, and it's where I met some fabulous trainers. But I lived through 9/11, and I was a flight attendant, and I lived in Greenwich Village, so I was very close to the Trade Center. I was there. I had flown in from Colorado the night before, and I woke up. It was really late, and I woke up and I heard screaming outside, and I didn't really think anything about it. It was Fashion Week, and Fashion Week was still on, so that's what I was watching, because that's what I loved too, was fashion and design and fitness. And my neighbor knocked on the door, and he said, "Did you hear we've been bombed by terrorists?" And at that time, we didn't know what had happened. It was about, I don't remember, it might have been 9:30 in the morning. And I didn't know I wasn't watching the news. I never would have watched the news back then. And as the day unfolded, we realized that my airline, United Airlines, was one of the airlines that was hijacked, and that 2 planes had flown into the World Trade Center. And I remember walking downstairs. I must have walked downstairs about 10:30 in the morning, because I was actually going out to find coffee. And I saw all these people walking up from the Trade Center covered in ash. And they were just numb. They were mindless. I mean, they were just nobody knew what was going on. I ran up to the top of my building to see if I could see what was going on, and I was told on the roof to leave, that it wasn't safe. Nobody really knew at that time what was going on. I mean, we knew what was going on with the news, but it was still just so new. My parents were trying to get through. All the cell service was down. All the phone service was down. And when I finally got a line out to my parents, my mother was absolutely hysterical, because she didn't know if I was on one of the planes. I can't imagine the parents or any family of the passengers on, or the crew on any of those planes. But I was terrified. I had really walked away from any kind of faith. I didn't have any faith in anything. I just believed in evolution, and I believed all my professors at university. And my parents and my sister and her family, they were still very strong Christians. And I remember being in a plane. I was one of the first flight attendants to take a plane out of JFK to LA. People had been stranded in New York for a few days. People were stranded all over the country. Everything was grounded. And I was absolutely horrified to get on this plane. I thought, why? And I kept having nightmares of hijackings and men driving planes into buildings. And I called my mother, and she said, "Well, I'm going to pray Psalm 91 over you." And I was like, well, okay. I didn't believe in any of that. I was just like, there's no way. But I was like, my family's so naive. I wish I could believe like they do, but I can't. But anyway, I just humored her. And but I was absolutely petrified. And it was 4 flight attendants on a Boeing 767. And it was typically like a 10 to 12 crew, just flight attendants. And all the senior flight attendants had called out. None of them showed up for work. And it was 4 junior flight attendants. It was 4 first-year flight attendants that took this packed plane to LA. And we made it, obviously. And but I was so scared, and I didn't understand anything and why things were happening in the world that were happening, and why wasn't I on the plane? And I got furloughed, which means in terms of airlines, I got laid off temporarily, but I didn't want to leave New York. I had dreamed of living in New York my whole life, even as a child. And so I was leaving. I had free flights for 3 months. I traveled to Thailand and traveled to Brazil by myself, and really searching for like meaning in anything. Like that year I'd been to Israel. I had been a lot of beautiful countries, and I knew I didn't want to leave New York, and I'm such a rule follower. I don't break the rules. I do everything like people tell me. I like never want to get in trouble. So I was at a diner in New York, and I pulled out the Village Voice and the classifieds, because back then like internet was just starting. I mean, it wasn't like used. And I opened the classifieds and I looked for fitness jobs, because I knew that's one thing that I kept like all through my whole year flying. I was always into fitness. And I saw this ad for a receptionist at this place called Lotte, Berk. And I didn't know what that was, but I was like, okay, it's on the Upper East Side, which is where I happened to be at the time. And I felt like a voice said, the ad said, don't call and do not come by, fax your resume. So I felt like this voice inside, which I called gumption at the time, and now I know was Holy Spirit. But I just heard, go and introduce yourself. And I am so not one of those people. I always do everything by the book. And I went to Kinko's, which is now FedEx, and I got my resume done, and I went to Lotte Berk, walked in, introduced myself. They're like, thank you. And then one of the teachers came down, and just on my way out, she's like, I'm such and such. What are you doing? And I was like, I just want to be in fitness. I just want to get my foot in the door. I'll do anything. And she's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to teach. I want to be a trainer. And she was like, okay, let's go talk. And so I ended up going through this series of auditions before I was to leave New York City for Christmas holidays. And I got a job, and I got a job making twice what I was making with the airlines, plus benefits, doing bar. But nobody knew what bar was. Bar was this institution, and mainly in this Upper East Side of Manhattan, brownstone, 5 floors of just creme de la creme exercise. And I was hired as an apprentice teacher and put through this rigorous apprenticeship, and it was like a dream. I went home for Christmas and came back, and I was working. And at one of the most incredible fitness studios in the world. And certainly it made an impression on me, because it was lined not just with fitness magazine articles, but like WWD, Bazaar, and Elle and Vogue. I mean, it was not just these publications that I was used to looking at. It was like the fashion magazines, which was like super, super cool, because it was that high end. And I was like, pinch me, I'm this 26-year-old girl from Alabama, like small town Alabama, and I am working in this crazy high end studio with like CEOs of companies and models and actresses. And so it was very cool. It was very, very neat.